YouTube, it is I, Vincent, back again with yet another guitar video. And so far on this channel, we've spoken a lot about specific brands and their own specific business practices that either led to their success or their downfall. So today I thought it'd be fun to kind of just look at the guitar industry as a whole and talk about how these guitar brands actually make money from a more general standpoint. And hopefully give y'all a little bit more insight about how the guitar industry works in a more digestible package. So you walk into a Guitar Center, and it's pretty easy to assume that guitar companies all kind of make money the exact same way. They build their guitars, you buy their guitars, and then they profit. Boom. Simple. Except that's like not really how the guitar industry works. In fact, for some companies, the guitar itself isn't even the most profitable thing that they sell. Behind every single guitar that you see on the shelves of Guitar Center is an enormous business ecosystem that involves a lot of overseas factories, a lot of artist endorsements, dealership agreements, financing, accessories, etc., etc., and a whole lot of other things that are very, very boring. And all of this stuff leads to some shockingly thin profit margins. So today we're going to be pulling the curtain back on how some brands like ESP, Fender, Ibanez, and so on and so forth actually make their money, because trust me, it's probably not really how you think. So chapter 1, we need to address the myth that guitar companies build every single guitar that they produce. One of the biggest misconceptions amongst guitar players is that every company owns enormous factories filled with a gajillion workers that produce all of their guitars in-house, when in reality, that's kind of the exception and not really the rule. Most guitar brands that you see are kind of just designers and marketers and business people first, and then manufacturers second. Most companies don't even build things themselves. Instead, they work with what we call OEM factories. Think of them as just kind of contract manufacturers that kind of just build all the guitars that these brands design. A brand like ESP or Fender designs it, and then they just pay another company to build it for them. This is an incredibly common business practice amongst the guitar industry, and one of the biggest examples that we have is Cort Guitars. Most people know about Cort as, you know, the kind of budget-friendly guitar brand, but what many people don't realize is that they are arguably the largest guitar manufacturer in the world, having produced instruments for brands like Ibanez, PRS, G&L, and so many more. The exact product relationships kind of vary over time depending on the contracts, but Cort has still remained one of the industry's dominant OEM manufacturers. And another major player that you guys have probably heard of is WMI, or World Music Instruments, in South Korea. And this factory is known for producing a lot of the higher-end Schecter and LTD models, as well as Chapman and Dean and so on and so forth. Even Balaguer, which is a boutique custom shop company, produces a lot of their instruments at WMI. And when you kind of view it from this lens, suddenly these brands aren't really competing with each other as much as you thought, because most of them are kind of just coming out of the exact same building. Obviously, this doesn't mean that every single guitar from every single brand is identical. Obviously, every brand has their own woods, neck choices, hardware, so on and so forth. But the actual factory itself, often just the same. And this is why often two guitars from entirely different brands can often feel surprisingly similar. But now we need to talk about why companies actually do this. Why do OEM factories exist? Why don't these brands just make their own guitars in their own factories? Because labor is really, really expensive. Take a USA built guitar. You gotta have higher wages for the US labor, you gotta pay for higher insurance, you gotta pay for property taxes, environmental regulations, small production runs, a lot higher costs on materials, so on and so forth. And now suddenly a guitar costs thousands of dollars to produce. And that's why so many USA produced guitars or Japanese produced guitars cost so much money. And now compare that to somewhere like Indonesia or South Korea, where companies can produce a gajillion modern CNC produced instruments at a dramatically lower cost, while still maintaining pretty consistent quality across the board. Indonesia and South Korea in particular have become massive hubs in this just because of their significantly lower operating costs than somewhere like America or Japan. And that's why you've seen so many companies over the past few decades kind of shift most of their production over to these companies, like Ibanez Premium, the Schecter Diamond Series, LTD, PRS SE. Why do the companies focus so much on all these imports that we know and love? Because that's where the biggest margins are. And speaking of margins, great segue, the profit margin isn't necessarily what you think. If a guitar costs, say $1,000 to buy, that doesn't necessarily mean that the company makes $1,000. Not even remotely close. A dealer will typically purchase an instrument at about 60 to 70% of the manufacturer's suggested price. So from that $1,000, you're already down to $600, $700. But then at this point, the manufacturer has already paid for the manufacturing, the shipping, the import prices, the warehousing, marketing, artist relations, warranty, engineering, product design, so on and so forth. You get the picture. And then the dealer themselves still needs enough of a margin so that they can pay their rent, employees, insurance, utilities. I can keep rambling on about big boring words, but I think you guys can get the point. By the time that everybody that needs to get paid ends up getting paid, the actual net profit on a guitar can be pretty tiny. This is one reason why companies care so much about volume and producing these mass imports, because selling 10,000 guitars at a modest margin can be significantly more sustainable than just selling 500 guitars with a larger profit margin. And now we need to touch upon a very important way that guitar brands make their money, and that is through artist endorsements. And that's not necessarily just through selling artist signature guitars. Sometimes the purpose of having a signature artist is just to kind of just sell legitimacy. I mean, take John Petrucci for example. His signature Music Man guitar kind of just became the default benchmark for what a modern metal guitar could be. Even players who never really heard of John Petrucci or intended of buying a JP model associate Music Man with premium craftsmanship because they have a musician like John Petrucci at their disposal. Or think about Sinister Gates with Schecter or what he was able to do with that brand. Him being a signature artist didn't just help move his signature guitars, it helped kind of redefine Schecter's entire design language in the 2000s and turn this relatively niche parts builder into one of the biggest names in modern metal just because of one singular dude that wears eyeliner. A lot of the times when signing artists, companies are often buying the attention, credibility, and aspiration associated with these artists just as much as the immediate sales that they get from it. And that return isn't necessarily always measurable from guitar to guitar. Sometimes the value is just in how the market perceives your brand. And now we need to talk about the hidden gold mine of every guitar brand, and that is the accessories. And that's something that every retailer understands. Accessories are where the margins are. Strings, picks, straps, cases, wall hangers, cleaning kits, cables. A player who buys just one guitar over the course of like 5 years will proceed to spend hundreds of dollars on these accessories over the lifetime as a player. And many of these items have significantly higher margins than the guitars themselves. It's why every single company kind of just sells like an ecosystem of products and not just the guitar themselves, and why you see Fender branded everything when you go to Guitar Center, whether it's Fender picks, Fender cables, Fender straps, you know what I mean. And speaking of dealers, the relationship between the dealers can often be just as important as the relationship with the customers. Because most brands don't really sell directly. They sell to dealers like Sweetwater, Guitar Center, Thomanns, or Andersons. And these relationships are everything, because the dealers are the ones who commit to stocking the inventory. They're the ones that are showcasing the product, and they're the ones that are providing customer support on your product. And in return, the manufacturers often provide marketing assets, training, and sometimes even advertising funds for the guitars. But getting your guitar or product onto the floor of a major retailer can oftentimes expose that product to thousands of people who often might not have even considered that in the first place. And now the final key in the whole guitar selling business is obviously social media. I mean, we can't talk about, you know, the business of anything in the world at all without talking about social media. 20 years ago, brands often marketed entirely through magazines or artist endorsements. These artists would often go on tours and people would be like, oh, what guitar is that guy using? Let me try it out. But today a guitar can go entirely viral overnight. I mean, take literally any of Tim Henson's signature guitars. So now these companies invest heavily in social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok because attention has become one of the most valuable currencies in the entire industry. Not even just the guitar industry, just the business world in general. I think Ola Englund has been a perfect example of that. He didn't just build solar guitarists through his amazing guitar specs and great prices. I mean, that sure helped, but he built the trust through a social media audience first. The audience came before the product, and many newer brands kind of don't really follow that playbook. So, in conclusion, how do guitar companies actually make money? As we can see, it's not just by selling guitars. It's through a carefully balanced business based on manufacturing partnerships, efficient import production, dealer networks, artist branding, high-margin accessories, building long-term customer relationships, and having fantastic marketing and social media. The guitar itself is just kind of the centerpiece, the cornucopia as you will. The real business is just everything surrounding that. But that's enough of me yammering on about things that I'm probably underqualified to speak about. Now I open the floor to you guys. Have you guys learned anything from this video, or do you think that I got anything horrendously wrong? Please feel free to leave your thoughts down below in the comments section, and if you like this video, please feel free to leave a like and maybe a subscribe. It surely helps me out immensely. And with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.